Alright, so a continuation, since we're on the topic of communication lines today. They're not all that easy. And this would be a prime example of it. And in this car here, it's a older, let's see, what year is this thing? 2004 Jeep Grand Cherokee. And on this one, it had no PCI bus. Now, looking at a PCI diagram here, I'm just going to pull up this one right now because I've already had the OE diagrams up. I can tell you that every single module here right now that had a PCI connector going to it is disconnected. There is no junction connector on this, there is no splice. So as I was doing this here, what I had was a dead straight line of about 9 volts, 7 volts, sometimes slightly higher, sometimes slightly lower. And when I disconnected each one of the modules, what was happening is, we'll go back around, and we're in some tight quarters here, but I'm going to replay this for you because unfortunately now that I've disturbed it, I cannot recreate it. But alright, let me get comfy here. Here's where I was at, and I apologize for the screen flash there. The refresh rate I can't change on this thing, I don't know why. But anyhow, this is where I was at with all modules disconnected. Zoom in, come on, focus, there we are. 13, I don't know, it doesn't want to stay focused. 13.8 volts. This was with everything off, and I have a battery maintainer out there on right now on flash programming. So I'm going to scroll through each one of these. At this point here, what I did was I actually took a test light to ground and I tapped it right here. I tapped that PCI bus line to get it down from 13.8, and I wanted to see whether or not it would come back. And indeed it did. It creeped its way back up there, and it kind of hovered around about 9.8, 10 volts. Okay, now I still had the maintainer on there the entire time. When I played around with things, whether I tapped it very quickly to power or anything like that, it would always seem to come back to around this voltage with all the modules disconnected. With them connected in there, it would be down about 6.5. So this is me playing around a little bit more and topping it down to ground and seeing whether or not it would just jump right back up, and it did. So as I continued on, what I realized was this line was not just any old voltage. Obviously it had to be feeding into our PCI bus somewhere along the way. So the same kind of method that I used on the Escalade in the previous video is something similar to what I had to use here. So what I did was I went out there and I actually started unplugging fuses one at a time, making sure that I could find it. So I can look at that power circuit diagram and lay it up next to our information bus diagram with the connectors, with the splices, not using the color diagrams on that one, using the OE diagram. And that way I could try to get an idea as to where something could have gone wrong. And there was only one spot that really stood out in my mind right off the bat, and pulling the fuse actually proved it. So pulling the fuse immediately brought it to where I could actually see what was going on. Now, this is after I plug it back in now, and you'll see that small little pulsing voltage on there. I still had one module connected. So unfortunately though, it won't do it now. But what I did find on this truck is that if I went out there and I disconnected my ignition switch fuse, which is a big 40 ampere on here, that would be the second one in right here, there was a change. It dropped right down. So when I pulled this out and it dropped right down, it made me think right away, okay, I need to find out how do the wires get into the car this way, where does the ignition switch run? I pull up the ignition switch diagram and they show it going down through 2 bulkhead connectors. That upper bulkhead connector right there is the one that I'm curious about, and we are going to do that. We're going to take it out of there live while we have the chance. And I was kind of stopped right where it was, just so we could see. If we're right about this, and I think we are. There's no sign of anything being wet down here, but I have a feeling. And green crusties. Oh my. Hold on, let me see if I got my light out here. Where the heck did I put my light? Come on, little light, where are you? They parked it right up next to a building here, so it's a little tougher to get into. There's my light. All right. Let me get that light face the right way. And I think